What's up everybody, it's Justin here again and I'm back with another video. Now right off the bat, I know this video looks a little different from anything I've put out in the past. First and foremost, I'm not outside today. I'm just recording in my bedroom, which is a first for me. But yeah, we're gonna do this and we'll get through it. So about a week ago, I drove out to the Dolly Sods wilderness in West Virginia, where I met with a new friend of mine and completed my second Shakedown hike in preparation for my AT thru hike next year. Now my intention was to document that hike and be able to share it in this video for you all to see. But unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, I wasn't able to gather as much footage as I had hoped. So my plan is to show you what I was able to record, and for the rest of the trip, I will just sort of be sitting and talking and explaining to you all. So for this first portion of the video, I was actually able to record on trail. So without further ado, let's go back there. I know what you're thinking, and I'm thinking the same thing. Am I crazy? And I don't know. The answer to that question might be a yes. So today I'm doing another Shakedown hike in preparation for my AT thru hike next year. And I don't know why every weekend that I choose to do a Shakedown, Mother Nature just decides to give me everything. As you can see, there is snow everywhere, which is wonderful. It's also very cold. It's probably like 35 degrees out here. And if I didn't have Alicia with me, who you can see here, I probably would not be out here right now. But we plan this little Shakedown together. Alicia is also going to be thru hiking the AT next year. So if you're interested in watching some other thru hikers, you can also check out her channel, which is called Alicia In The Mountains. She has a lot more content than I do right now. So you can check out all of her gear info and stuff like that. But yeah, we're gonna be spending one night out in the Dolly Sods, West Virginia, in the snow and in the cold, and really testing out our gear. So we will see how that goes. You ready?
Ready.
All right, let's do it.
Maybe that was
There's a lot of camp spots in here.
yeah.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, we are in the Dolly Sods, West Virginia, hiking the Lion's Head Loop Trail via Red Creek. So this is about a 22 mile trail in total. We are trying to do this in just 2 days, so we'll only be camping out tonight. So our plan for today is to try to get 15 miles done to get to our proposed campsite, and then that'll just leave us with about 8 or 9 or 7 or 8 miles left tomorrow. But with the way this trail is looking so far, I don't know if we're gonna get 15 miles done today, because there are no blazes. There are only signs, and in between the signs there is confusion. So we're just trying to figure this whole thing out without getting lost a million times. So yeah. First real obstacle of the day is to figure out how to cross this river. There does not seem to be a clear rock path to cross, and it is entirely too cold to be getting my feet wet today. So we're gonna have to figure this out. So I just wanted to jump in here and say that this is where the concern really started to set in for me. And we weren't even 2 full miles into the hike yet. Now with it being so cold, I knew that I absolutely did not want to get my feet wet. But in looking at our options and getting across this river, it seemed pretty inevitable. Now, looking back on it, I wish I had brought my camp shoes on this trip, and what I would have done is probably taken my shoes and socks off, put my camp shoes on, and just crossed the river that way so that I would have had dry socks and shoes to put back on after the fact. I think that would have been a much smarter way to go about it. But that's not what we did, but I guess you'll see that in a sec. Okay, so yeah, we found a way across the river, basically putting our feet in the river. So our feet are wet, which is lovely. Don't we love wet feet? We've been making our way uphill for a little while. Thankfully, this is nothing close to what the Loyal Sock Trail did to me, so I am like breezing through this. Yeah, we're still not moving as fast as we would like, so we might have to rework some plans today. The days are just really short. So yeah, I'll follow up in a little bit.
Just got to the top of that very first steep climb, and then we're gonna get kind of flatter. Go past some campsites. And another climb.
So Alicia and I both agreed that this hike really isn't about the miles. It's more so about just dealing with the conditions. I mean, you've got snow, you've got a trail that's a little more difficult to navigate because it's not so well marked. You've got river crossings that have been sort of hard to navigate, so we're dealing with colder air, wet feet, and yeah, as we move into the later evening and into tonight, the temperature is really supposed to drop down into like the mid-20s. So we're gonna see how we sort of manage that. I have a 20-degree enlightened equipment down quilt, so that's gonna be interesting to see how well I sleep tonight. But yeah, I mean, if anyone's gonna be ready for the AT next year, I guess it's gonna be us, because yeah. I mean, the trail itself isn't super strenuous, so pretty happy about that. But, you know, the elements make everything so much more challenging. So, yeah, fun times. So we just stumbled onto this campsite where apparently someone had a fire and didn't completely put it out, which is not the smartest or the most responsible thing to do, especially considering we're literally right next to a water source. So whoever had this fire could have and should have made sure to put it out completely. But we're gonna try to see what we can do without using our own good water. So yeah. Okay, so unfortunately that was pretty much all the footage that I was able to get from the first day. So I'm using my little iPhone 8 Plus to record all of these videos, and basically the cold air zapped the life right out of it. I watched my phone go from literally 60% charge to just being completely dead in a second. So I didn't even bother trying to charge it up while we were hiking. So I'll just recap the rest of day one. So basically, after crossing that river and having wet feet, I became a little nervous. I felt like it was important for us to keep moving throughout the day. And we also ended up shortening our hike. So rather than doing 15 miles on the first day, we only ended up doing about 9 or 10 to get to the same campsite that we had planned out earlier in the day. Pretty much by the time we got to camp, my toes were stinging with pain, and also my fingers were as well. So the first thing I did once we got our tent set up was I jumped into my tent, changed out of my wet socks into some dry ones, put those dry socks into my down booties, and then stuck my feet into the foot box of my quilt. And I just sat there for at least an hour and just tried to let my body heat up a little bit, because I was just so cold, and I was starting to become a little concerned about frostbite. Thankfully, Alicia packed some foot warmers, and I also packed some hand warmers, so I was able to warm up my limbs pretty nicely, thankfully. So once I was able to get warm enough, I made some ramen for dinner, and I also had some hot chocolate just to try to bring some more warmth back to my body. And Alicia and I were both in bed and ready to go to sleep by probably 6 o'clock at the latest. It was dark by 5:15, 5:30, and we really didn't feel like trying to stay up to start a fire or anything because it was just too cold. I will say that those hand warmers pretty much saved my life. I ended up sticking a couple into my socks, which really brought the life back to my feet and my toes. And once I got my synthetic jacket on from Enlightened Equipment, that really warmed me up, and I was able to stick my hands into the kangaroo pockets to warm those up. And I would say I slept pretty comfortably. I was surprised that my 20-degree quilt kept me as warm as it did, with temperatures getting down to as low as probably 22, 23 degrees that night. But yeah, I didn't really feel cold at all throughout the night. I was able to get an okay amount of sleep, not a ton because there were some noisy campsites a few yards away from us. But yeah, the next morning I got up, charged my phone a little bit, and I decided to record a little more. So I'll include that now. Okay, so I know that if I decide to put a video out, it's probably going to be a little crazy because I didn't get a whole lot of footage yesterday because the cold air just completely zapped all the life out of my phone. My phone died within not even 3 hours of being out here. So yesterday, I think we did about 8 or 9 miles. Ended up cutting the loop short because it was just really cold and our feet were wet and we really just wanted to get to camp. By the time we did get to camp last night, I couldn't even feel my feet anymore, and I'm pretty sure that had I kept them in my wet socks and shoes any longer, I probably would have gotten a little frostbitten. But yeah, yesterday was kind of miserable, but We survived. And I do want to say that the hand warmers that I threw in my pack at the last minute before I left my house the other day, they saved my life. They saved my feet. I'm so glad I made that move, because when I finally got feeling and life back into my toes last night, I felt so relieved, and I was actually able to sleep even though it was cold as hell last night. This morning it's like in the mid-20s, so it's pretty cold. My shoes were rock solid when I went to put them on this morning, which if you've never put on a pair of frozen shoes before, that is an experience. So we're gonna make some coffee, get something warm in us before we head back to the parking lot. So I think we've got about 7 miles to do today, and we are going to go home and warm up. All right, so basically on day 2, I ended up having the same issues that I had on day 1 with my phone, where basically all of the battery life was just zapped completely dry in a matter of minutes. I'll chalk it up to, my iPhone 8 being a little older, and I also know that the cold air does drain battery life, but I think when you start seeing your phone go from like 70% to flat out dying, then that's a sign that it's maybe time for an upgrade. So I think I may be looking into upgrading pretty soon, or at least before I get out on the AT next year. So basically, day 2 was still cold. The morning was definitely cold, and peeling my face out from underneath my quilt, it was like getting smacked with like a blast of cold air. But once we got used to it, it was okay. Putting our feet back into frozen shoes was a hot mess. I definitely do not like that feeling, but at the same time, I guess it is kind of funny. Once we got moving again, our body started to warm up again, our shoes started to break in, and everything was good. And I mean, we only had about 7 miles to get back to the car, so we decided to finish the loop, which we had decided to shorten. So that took us up to the Lion's Head Lookout, and then we proceeded back to the parking lot. Now, I was able to get a quick glimpse of the Lion's Head Lookout before my phone died a second time, so I'll include that now. And from here, it was back across the same river that we had to cross the day before, where we got our feet wet. Somehow I managed to rock hop enough this time to barely get either of my feet wet. I wish I had managed to do that the day before. But once we got back in the parking lot, we did not waste any time throwing our stuff into our cars, turning on the heat, and getting warm fast. So immediately after coming home from this trip, I wrote down some key takeaways and also some adjustments that I can make that will likely help me moving forward. First of which, wet feet is something that I really do not want to have to deal with, especially when it's cold out. So my plan moving forward, if I happen to come to any river crossings when it's cold, will be to just take my shoes and socks completely off, cross in camp shoes, or just go barefoot if I have to, and then put my dry socks and shoes back on the other side. If I absolutely have to get my feet and socks wet, I might start to carry some bread bags to stick into my shoes to keep my socks dry, at least if my shoes have to get wet. Secondly, speaking of shoes, I have been testing out these Hoka One One Speedgoat 4s. For the last few years, I've been hiking in ultra lone peaks, and I think they've served me pretty well, though I was noticing some irritation in my knee while using them, so I decided to try a different shoe with a little more cushioning. But ever since putting these Hokas on and taking them out on a couple backpacking trips, they have just caused so many other foot problems that I never had before wearing Ultras. So I think that the search for the right shoe for me is still ongoing, and I'm definitely planning to take these Hokas back to REI. Next, I want to touch on my glove system, which I have decided I need to update. So pretty much on this trip, I took just a basic pair of these like liner gloves that I picked up at maybe a Walmart or something. So I had those on under these synthetic black diamond gloves that I got from REI. And I actually think these are just a glove liner. And then I had both of these on under these REI Essential Rain Mittens. And as long as I was moving, my hands stayed warm. But whenever we would stop, my fingers would immediately start to tingle again, and they would start to sting if we stayed still for too long. And also after a long day of hiking on the first day, by the time we got to camp, there was just no warming my hands back up. I guess they had just had enough and they were done for the day. So I'm definitely planning to upgrade my glove system. But aside from those two things, I think that I pretty much have my gear set up almost finalized, and I'm probably going to be working on my first gear video soon. I've just been trying to like tie up some loose ends before I start talking about any of my gear at all, but I'll get to that when I get to it. But yeah, I guess this is gonna do it for my second Shakedown hike. I definitely learned a lot from it. I'm definitely glad that Alicia and I went out there, even though the weather really made me nervous. But this is stuff that I might see when I'm on the AT next year, since I'm starting in mid to late February. So it's better to be prepared 2.5 months ahead of time than to find out on trail and have to deal with stuff like right then and there when I may not be fully prepared for it. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all at the next one. Peace.